All right, what's up, guys? We are back. Another NFL free agency pod here as we get more data coming in, data in the form of signings, some big moves going on, some moves seemingly officially confirmed. We'll talk about them all. I'm Chris Spags, joined once again by a man who heads up our NFL matchups column, also doing our NFL free agency tracker at Awesemo.com, Adam Pfeifer, better known as Adam Pfeifer, but also known as A Pfeifer24 at Twitter. So go follow him right now. But Adam, how are you doing? How is a little sanity check for us both here? How are you feeling after a couple more days here cooped up and presumably lacking any sort of social activities to keep yourself sane?
Yeah, I mean, supposed to have my bowling league on Thursday night, which is tonight. That obviously has been canceled, and that was my last chance of leaving the house anytime soon. Also, an ideal time to have a birthday. My birthday was on Sunday or
Oh,
Saturday,
happy belated
and
birthday.
thanks. I literally did nothing. It was fun. It was a great time.
An ideal
Like this
birthday
is
in
such
that
a
respect.
yeah, it's such a terrible time, but yeah, we obviously got the big blockbuster news we've been waiting for in the form of Tom Brady, and there's still other pieces we're waiting on and some more speculation. So, like I said, at least the NFL is giving us some sort of distraction.
Yeah, so we will talk some NFL coming up here. Another distraction that is out there for you if you want to take advantage. It's a big day for us here at Awesemo. Our NBA 2K streams, which I was able to jump on yesterday, had a lot of fun breaking down that Raptors game against the Suns. The Suns really just kicked their ass in a way that I think we all expected, but fun to see it actually break out that way when seeing it in the sim world. But these guys are still doing those streams every day. I think we're having some weekend streams as well. If you go to awesemo.com/NBA2K, we have our daily challenges. We also have a FanDuel contest going on. It's a free roll. If you go on the FanDuel app, you'll see it laid out right there under eNBA. So go check that out immediately on the FanDuel app or at FanDuel.com. And Adam, have you been following this stuff at all? Because I'm not baffled by it, I guess, but it's crazy to me that we have a showdown slate for a video game that some of our guys came up with less than a week ago, basically.
Yeah, I've definitely been keeping tabs on it. It's really cool. I think it was the Sixers game with the Iverson team that I was watching a couple days ago, and like it's obviously really cool to watch, and especially with everybody from the Awesemo community watching, but it's also very maddening to watch because the AI just does some really, really weird, questionable things. And it's just like you're not watching a real NBA game and you're not playing. So it's like you wish you were controlling them at times. But no, it's cool. Like it's something to not only just kind of keep ourselves busy, but like everybody, like you said, you were on the show, like everybody, Laffy's on the show, Josh, Ben, like everybody's still interacting together despite not being able to leave the house and stuff like that, or be able to watch really any sports. So
You get a little action on it combined with hanging out with our guys is a good time. And yeah, yesterday in the game with the Raptors, like Kevin Willis, who at that point is the oldest possible version of himself in his early 40s, chucking up a three-pointer, just holding the ball at the top of the key. Like there were some baffling things that happened, but also some quality basketball in between. Tracy McGrady, just a historic effort last night. So tune in tonight. I don't have the game that they have. I feel like it's Mavericks Rockets tonight. It is a Mavericks finals team that won the championship going against the Rockets team that won the 93-94 championship with Olajuwon and some of the
I
other
was
big
gonna
names
say
there.
if it was the Yao Ming McGrady Rockets team, it was very overpowered in that game for obvious reasons. Like
Yeah.
Yao Ming is just unheard of
Yeah,
in
some
that
good
game.
video game characters in that one. I was a big fan of those Rockets when they first won that championship because I was very much a Jordan kid. And then when the Rockets came in, they were basically the replacement Jordan with Hakeem. And then later Clyde Drexler doing some stuff. But it'll be a fun one. 7 p.m. Eastern, it looks like, is the timing today. So go to our YouTube channel, which you are on right now. Subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when those guys go live. And again, check out the contest on FanDuel. I think it's a much better version of the action than just simulating games and getting box scores. At least there's some investment there, and perhaps too much investment when you're hosting the show because it gets very distracting. Speaking of hosting the show, let's get into it here. So here's a move we talked about the other day. We need to talk about it at some more depth today because I'm sure our opinions can kind of mold and shift as we get more data and take a look at things. And honestly, for me, see some things go through on Twitter from guys like Brian Baldinger, I think are interesting. But Tom Brady officially going to Tampa Bay, though, this one still seems weird to me. He hasn't put any announcement on social media. I know they're still crossing some T's and dotting some I's in the contract, but it does seem like ESPN begrudgingly reported it and then have now just fully embraced it. But Brady going to the Bucs here. Adam, we've had about 2 days to sit on this now. We were more bullish on him going to the Chargers because of some of the weapons there and the options that he would basically have to make himself feel comfortable. But how are you feeling now about this Brady to Tampa Bay move? Do you think he's a QB1, let's say, for a 10-team league in season longs?
I think he very well could be. So the obvious, like the big storyline with him in Tampa Bay is like, does he have the arm strength to play in Bruce Arians' system? And like Tom Brady was, I think, ninth in deep ball completion rate last year. Like, and I think it was Dan Orlovsky pointed out on, I think it was Get Up, that like the first like 6 weeks of the year when he had some like combination of Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown, like he was, I think, second in 20+ yard completion. So like when he has the weapons that can make plays down the field, like he's still, even at age 43, can produce. And you look like, okay, he's 43, and it was obviously pretty big difference in age, but like Carson Palmer in Bruce Arians' system at age 35 threw for 35 touchdowns, 4,700 yards, and was the quarterback five. So like, yeah, they're not the same player, they're not the same age at the time, but like there's no denying that the receivers in Tampa Bay are better than the ones that Palmer had. That he had, like, Larry Fitzgerald is great, Michael Floyd. I think John Brown is like a second year player who didn't really develop then. They had no tight end to speak of in that team. So now Brady at age 43 still has Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, OJ Howard, Cameron Brate. There's rumors that Antonio Brown might join the team. I would be shocked if that happened, but no, I think Brady's a guy that is probably going to be like, whenever I do my, probably after the draft, I'll do my first round of rankings. He'll probably be in that like quarterback 11, 12 range, which I guess you asked in a 10-team league, but in a 12-team league, I think he's like a back end quarterback one. The thing that's different with him and Winston is Brady's just not going to turn the ball over as much as Winston. So I don't know if the passing volume will be as high. Now their secondary is still a work in progress. Their run defense, as you saw last year, was really one of the best units in the league. But if their defense in the passing game can't improve, like maybe Brady's in more shootouts than he was in New England. And the other thing, before I close it out here, New England was so run heavy inside the 5 yard line the last handful of years. I don't know as of now if Tampa Bay is going to be in that same mindset with Ronald Jones, and if they bring in a Melvin Gordon or a rookie.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense that, there are some ways that the team can be different. I think one issue that I would have a little bit if you're thinking about Brady compared to, let's say, Jameis Winston, the game script's certainly not going to be as good as Winston, who the team was trailing from behind a lot last year. The defense made some improvements again. And we'll talk about a little bit more about defenses and some signings that are the most important later on in this podcast, even though, defense in fantasy is kind of a moving target. But that defense, the run game, one of the best run stopping defenses in the league last year, with Ndamukong Suh in the middle. And, really don't see any reason why they would get much worse with some of the moves they've made so far. So that's one thing that would give me some pause. But, I think the thing that spooks me a little bit, and what spooked me when we talked about it first, Brady had a 42% completion rate in 2018 on deep passes, 43% in 2019 on deep passes. So like those aren't good numbers. And we went over that in some depth last time out. But he still has a decent QB rating. Like when he is throwing it deep, he's not turning it over. He's still making big plays happen. He's just not connecting on every throw. And there is one highlight reel that I saw. Again, Brian Baldinger saw Matthew Berry retweet it, but then it just came through my feed about 5 times in the span of 10 minutes there. And he does break down some of Brady's better deep throws, some of the throws to show that he has velocity, that he's able to throw all the way across the field, 20 to 35 yards downfield. So I think he's capable of it. The issue I still have is, and this is something too, which teams have debated, and Adam, maybe you have some thoughts on this, but there are some people who believe out there, and I guess there is some data that backs it up, though I wasn't sure how concrete it was, but sacks, I guess, tend to be more a function of the quarterback than the offensive line. And, I think, and mentally for me, I do think there's a trickle down from the offensive line. Obviously, if he gets pressured a lot more, that's not going to be great, but that does mean that Brady can check it down more. And I do think that makes Chris Godwin a guy who really still is going to have a lot of upside, even if there are some struggles with him hanging in the pocket, maybe taking a beating more than he would. But Adam, do you have any read on this at all here, where Jameis, a guy who took a lot of sacks, but also not the headiest quarterback, and a guy who doesn't seem to mind getting hit too much, perhaps because of lack of brain cells? I don't want to speculate too much there. But do you feel like there's something here with this where maybe Brady's not going to take as many hits in the pocket just because he knows he can feel the pressure better? He knows when to get rid of it, perhaps more than Jameis does?
Yeah, absolutely. Jameis is one of those guys who, like, a throwaway for him is like bad. Like he would rather just hold on to the ball and try to make a play out of it, which is why he's so maddening at times. Tom Brady is like not going to do that. Especially at age 43, like this guy's not going to hold on to the football and take hits. So that's why you're going to probably see a lot of people, and I might do the same thing when I do my rankings, put Chris Godwin over Mike Evans, just because Evans is a guy who's, always deep down the field. And they're obviously going to, like, Bruce Arians has his system in place, but you're bringing in Tom Brady for $30 million. Like, you're going to cater your offense to the greatest quarterback of all time. Like, they're just not going to say, all right, Tom Brady, like, you're running our offense. You're throwing, 15, 20% of your passes 20 yards down the field. Like, they're going to mix things up, which is why OJ Howard will probably be interesting this year as like a post type sleeper. But yeah, 100%. That's why when I do, my offseason content, especially when I break down a team like the Chargers, Tyrod Taylor is kind of in that same mold. Like, I watched him exclusively in Buffalo. He took a lot of sacks, and it wasn't just because the Bills' offensive line was a work in progress then. He holds on the ball as long as any quarterback in the league, and so does Jameis. So that is going to be a different dynamic for this Buccaneers offense. It'll be interesting to see who their starting running back is, because Ronald Jones is, at the moment, their starting running back. Coming out of USC, he was not the greatest pass catcher or pass protector. So they're probably going to bring in somebody. But yeah, that'll change their entire dynamic of their offense, and probably going to be why Chris Godwin is going to be my preferred receiver from this offense.
Yeah, I think Ronald, and I am a USC guy, so no homerism here, but I do think that Ronald Jones, he just wasn't used in the pass game much last year, and I think there were some concerns.
They used Dario Ogunbowale all the time.
Yeah, and there were some concerns about his run blocking too, though I do think, at least according to PFF stats, he did kind of close some of those issues there where he was protecting better this year, and even for the beginning of the year where he still was losing some snaps to Peyton Barber and as well as Dario Ogunbowale. Not said that name in about 6 months, and it's a tough one.
The only reason I can say that name so easily is because I did a podcast every week for football, and the Bucs were like, the Bucs were like one of the most intriguing teams for fantasy every week. So like, I had to write up the matchups column, so I had to write up almost every player from every team, and it just kind of stuck. Same thing with like spelling Antetokounmpo from writing so much, like it comes natural, like stuff like that.
See, for me, I'm still like mentally, I still have a block with Giannis where I'll spell it out and I'll get it right, I think 90% of the time now, but there are some times where I miss the extra N in there or I mess up the M in the N. And anyway, point being, Dario Ogunbowale is still in the mix, but we saw the one game where Ronald Jones caught a lot of passes, and I mean, he happened to set, like, I think that was his season best as well in that one game he had, basically, because he didn't get much work his rookie year. But I think he could be used more. I think he showed some decent versatility, also some decent yards after contact last year as well. Not afraid of taking hits, and I think those are all positive signs. But I think overall, I'm willing to be a little more bullish here on Brady. I agree with everything Adam is saying about the mistakes being cut down. And I do think that even if he doesn't have as good of a connection with Mike Evans just because he's not willing to throw those 50-50 balls in the air, and we don't know that, honestly. We don't know that he's not going to be wanting to do that. And I think we speculated about that in the last podcast, that this could be his last act, is showing like, hey, I can basically do the most elite production despite being almost 45 or wanting to play to Nolan Ryan's age. I think there's a lot of things here that could be coming together. I think the game script thing is really the bigger concern, but they're also in a division that should be fairly competitive. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater's probably not going to kill the Panthers, even though we were not particularly bullish on him as a quarterback. Drew Brees, we all know the pedigree there, even if he does cede some more snaps to Taysom Hill. I like the spot for Brady, and I feel like it depends on where he's going to go in drafts. If he's going to be like a top 5 QB, if people are going to overvalue him that much, I'm probably not going to be there. But is there any reason, Adam, you could see why he wouldn't have that late career Peyton Manning year? I mean, he's now older than Peyton was for that first good Broncos year, but it does kind of seem like a similar parallel there, a guy trying to prove his point one more time in a new spot, and really probably a more ideal spot than Peyton had in Denver.
Yeah, like, would you be surprised if Tom Brady, especially if they don't have an established running game again, like, would you be surprised if he had one more like 40 touchdown year? Like, I wouldn't be shocked, like, especially because that Peyton Manning year when he had the record for touchdowns in Denver, like, a lot of it was them getting inside the 5 and they were just like letting Peyton throw touchdowns. Like, Julius Thomas had a huge year, and like, it's not the same type of offense, but like, you have a big body tight end, OJ Howard, you have a number 1 receiver in Mike Evans, and like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are more talented than Demaryius and Welker and those guys. Like, so I think it's interesting. Let me ask you this. Do you think if Brady is just, and he should be, just way more conservative with the football and not turning it over, and the Bucs defense improves a little bit, like, do you think it's possible for Chris Godwin and Mike Evans to both be top 12 receivers again?
I think it depends on how much they uncork it, and honestly, what games they're in. I think if they're in spots where they're up, 3 scores early, and then we can kind of downshift Brady, I do think they're probably going to recognize that they should do that more. But I think they have that potential. Yeah, I mean, at least on a week-to-week basis, it wouldn't shock me to see these guys have really big alternating weeks. And Brady is not necessarily a target agnostic guy where he clearly favored Julian Edelman a lot. I think that certainly does lend some credence to thinking that Godwin's going to be the better play overall. But I mean,
it was also by default last year because
yeah.
like Josh Gordon was gone after a point. Antonio Brown obviously was gone after a point. N'Keal Harry missed like the entire first half of the year. So like he was literally throwing to James White and Julian Edelman. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, but even when Gordon was there, he still definitely favored Edelman at least, slightly more. I think it's a nice spot for Godwin. I would feel the most comfortable with him. I guess that's one question too is I saw some people debating this on Twitter, but do you feel like Chris Godwin's like a wide receiver, like a top 5 wide receiver if you were drafting right now? Because that's where people are going. I feel like that's a little high, but if you can get him at like the 10, like wide receiver 10, I feel like that's pretty good value. It's kind of like splitting hairs though. I don't know.
I mean, you're not taking over Michael Thomas. I'm still taking Julio over him. I'm still taking Hopkins over him. But then like because think about it, like, okay, Odell Beckham, and I'm taking Devontae Adams over him, but Odell Beckham, no, I don't think is a lock. Tyreek Hill probably. So like the only guys I'm definitely taking over him, I think, are Thomas, Julio, Adams, Hopkins, and Tyreek Hill. Other than that, like he's in that range with Amari Cooper, with Keenan Allen, with all these guys.
Thielen, maybe? Would we bump Thielen up a little bit in that range? Or
that's literally where I was going. Yeah. So like if Thielen was in a pass happier offense, like he would probably lead the NFL in targets this year pretty easily. Yeah, and he still could, honestly.
He'd be an ultimate, like one of the better PPR options in the league, I would think. And we've seen him have that upside before. I think top 10 seems like the low mark for Chris Godwin right now. And I think you're right. I think you can make an argument for 5. And, we talked about it last podcast. I do think Hopkins is going to be a little overvalued because that team does want to run first and foremost. I just don't think he's going to get quite as much work. Should we also, by the way, talk about some of the DeAndre Hopkins stuff? Because I talked about it on my personal podcast yesterday, which you can find. If you want to find my less filtered thoughts, you can check out my pinned tweet on @ChrisSpags. But have you seen the reports about this where there's like Bill O'Brien was mad at DeAndre Hopkins for having his baby mamas around and also compared him to Aaron Hernandez in an in a meeting where he was like, the last time I had to have a talk like this, it was with Aaron Hernandez. And then I guess Hopkins told all this stuff to Michael Irvin. I guess unsure if he was on the record or not. It kind of seemed like, but Irvin reported it anyway. And it just seems like there's bad signs. There's another report too from who was it? Was it Jim Trotter? Somebody else, like a credible name this week, also had that a defensive back, a free agent defensive back, who's rumored to be Chris Harris, apparently was warned to not go to Houston because of Bill O'Brien by some of the other defensive players. Are you buying the smoke with the Bill O'Brien thing and also with the DeAndre Hopkins move and why and this being an even more antiquated move, even more than we thought based on the trade itself?
I honestly don't know. Like, I'm clearly, obviously not in any sort of way like tapped into the NFL, but from following the NFL for so long and writing about it and watching interviews and everything, I've never seen anything where DeAndre Hopkins has come off as anything but like a model citizen. Like, would you be surprised if Bill O'Brien just kind of said this to like try to make the trade make somewhat more sense because it was such an egregious trade? Like honestly, you have no clue. Like,
I think he's just one of those.
Maybe he's just sitting there like, oh, we gave this. I'm going to say DeAndre Hopkins is, he was bad in the locker room, so I can validate this awful trade I made.
I think it's not an impossible thing. But the way it came out, though, where it wasn't them leaking things to the media, though I guess they did kind of have some trickle out of him not practicing last year and because he's just been so banged up and he's had a history of injuries. But I don't know, man. I think it's just one of those things where he's an old school football coach who doesn't there's been a thing that a lot of cultural experts and analysts out there have talked about, but sometimes these like old, and you hate to kind of pigeonhole it like that, but a lot of these old white coaches sometimes can't relate to guys and the struggles that they're going through and the different worldviews. And DeAndre Hopkins does have kids from a bunch of different moms, and some of them have caused some dramatic issues in the past. And he's a popular guy in the locker room, so I could see a coach being like, oh, he might be making this into a bad kind of locker room, but like ultimately he's still a good guy. He's a good community guy. His teammates like him. Like, I think those are the things that matter more. And just sometimes coaches get, it's like basically thinly veiled racist stuff or racially coded stuff. And I feel like that's sort of what we are here with Bill O'Brien, but also just an incompetent GM too. So you can have it both ways. You can make fun of him for being possibly racist and make fun of him for just being incompetent. So great fun for the whole family. Let's keep going through here. We got some other moves that are going to be less. This one, I'll tell you what, no coded racism in this move with Phillip Rivers to the Colts. Phillip Rivers last year just was pretty not good, really turned the ball over. I think he was, in some respects, as bad as Jameis in terms of just turning the ball over, being really reckless with it. On deep throws in particular, 59 QB rating last year on deep throws, which was really not good. He had some games where he did throw them into it, but 5 TDs to 9 picks on throws over 20 plus yards for Rivers last year. He could be washed up, but I also think this Colts offense is going to really minimize his risk. I believe in the coaching staff there. Frank Reich, I think really one of the more unheralded coaches. What he did with the Colts last year, I honestly thought was impressive enough, even though they didn't, make much hay. Just getting what he did out of Brian Hoyer for a few weeks, I was impressed enough by that. So how would you feel about the move for Rivers? Because I think he's a guy I could definitely see playing in DFS and some games where it happens. I don't know that he has enough value to love in season long, but maybe you feel differently, Adam, here about Rivers in Indianapolis?
So Rivers for me, like for the last couple of years, has always been in that like quarterback 15 to 18 range when I do my preseason stuff, and he's going to be in that same spot here. I think the biggest beneficiaries could be Naheem Hines, Marlon Mack. We know they think he can be involved in the passing game more, but it's been inconsistent. And they still have Naheem Hines there, who's just a really, really good pass catcher. We know Rivers checks it down a lot. And then Jack Doyle. I mean, PFF's fantasy account tweeted that Rivers' season averages when throwing to tight ends since 2007, 114 targets, 82 catches, 986 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Eric Ebron's not there anymore, so this is Jack Doyle's job. I think Doyle's going to be a popular like late tight end to grab. Now, obviously, Rivers had Antonio Gates and Hunter Henry, so like obviously he's going to have a lot to do with his tight ends. But like you have T.Y. Hilton, you have Paris Campbell, who they drafted last year, who missed a lot of time. Zach Pascal, who they extended, who showed some signs. Then it's Jack Doyle. Like they don't have a ton of weapons offensively in the passing game. So Rivers, for me, he is reunited with Frank Reich, who was his offensive coordinator in San Diego in 2014. Maybe that'll help him. I think Ty kind of stays the same for me. Doyle takes a bump up. Marlon Mack is neutral for me. You're like we know the Colts want to run the ball behind their lead offensive line. And then Naheem Hines and Jack Doyle take a step up. Rivers really doesn't move the needle for me as himself being a fantasy contributor, but for guys like Doyle and Naheem Hines, it does have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's gonna take some more shots downfield for T.Y. Hilton, where we've kind of seen Hilton become a possession receiver over the last few years. Mm-hmm. And I mean, to his credit, he did not have that reputation coming into the league. Definitely didn't have it his first few years, and I think he's done a good job adapting to a different quarterback. But for Rivers' failings last year, he was throwing it deep at a pretty decent clip, and was at least taking the attempts. I mean, he had the 4th most deep attempts in the league, so I think there's room here for production. But I do think Reich is going to want to rein him in for the most part, unless he shows that he cannot turn the ball over. But I mean, out of the guys who threw the ball the most deep last year, Rivers is behind your boy Josh Allen, our boy. I'll say our boy Josh Allen, and some of these other guys as well, who you would think are not great deep ball throwers. Rivers was worse than that, but maybe actually.
And Brissett was so conservative last year. He 9.6% of his pass attempts traveled 20 yards or more. It was one of the 7 or 8 lowest marks in the league. Like he was super conservative. So like Rivers will take more shots. Hilton's going to be interesting. He's going to be like that receiver that keeps falling because he missed time last year and he's been around for a while, like kind of in the AJ Green mold where like if he slips in drafts, like he could put up like top 15 numbers at a really solid discount. Like it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think there's some opportunity here, and I think it's going to go a little bit undervalued. Not one that I would see being valuable every week because Adam mentioned it. They are a team that wants to run more. They are a little bit more conservative, but Rivers was not this bad in 2018 throwing the deep ball. He also was not throwing it quite as much, but he had a 91 QB rating there, an adjusted completion rate of 46%, which is perfectly in range. So if Rivers is not totally washed up, if he's not being driven insane during this coronavirus situation by his 57 children, just harping and being annoying at once. His wife must be the saint of all saints, by the way, dealing with all of that. But it's a spot here for Rivers where I think he's undervalued. He's certainly not going to be Tom Brady, but for a backup QB, if you're getting him, or in a 2 QB league, I think Rivers is very much in play and would not shock me to see him have some big weeks. And I think Doyle too. I agree. That's actually one part that I didn't think of, but Ebron out, we've seen that production be halved, but Rivers is probably going to want another option to check down to at a decent rate, and we've seen his love for Hunter Henry. And Doyle, not quite Hunter Henry in terms of size, but certainly capable of catching balls and keeping the chains moving. So Yeah, I'm a little more into Rivers than I thought I would be when we first talked about it. So 2 old QBs here winning us over in the last few days. Slightly older QB who may be less winning us over, but Nick Foles going to Chicago. The question here is, do you think Foles wins the starting job? Do you think there's any chance that Mitch keeps him at bay? I feel like people are treating it like a fait accompli that Foles will be the starter there. But I think this is one of those things, kind of like when we had the Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers situations in San Diego initially, when both those guys were on the team, where, and that's a long time ago, so excuse the dated reference, but I feel old and terrible saying it. But like Nick Foles could push Trubisky to actually be better. Like Brees wasn't great. I mean, he was fine, but he wasn't like a high level QB. And he did kind of take that jump when they brought Rivers in to fight off his job. And we've seen that happen a few times with quarterbacks. Are you feeling like Foles takes the job, or do you think there's a chance that Mitch rises to the occasion? Because for me, I really don't think it was all his fault last year. He certainly wasn't great, but the defense also regressed in a meaningful way. And it's hard to win if your defense is not as historic as it was the year before.
I think the Bears, barring any other moves, which I doubt they make, are going to plan on going into the season with Trubisky as their starter, but Nick Foles will probably push him. Like Nick Foles, he didn't play much last year. When he played, he wasn't that good. Like the system and everything in Philadelphia was great. If he does end up starting at some point, like he's historically been a huge slot guy. So Anthony Miller might get a bump. Allen Robinson plays in the slot like 40% of the time last year. So like it wouldn't be bad. But I don't think regardless, either way, like if Nick Foles is ruled to start, I don't think Allen Robinson moves up or down really much at all. Or if Trubisky's a starter, it doesn't really impact much for me. They didn't add any other receivers other than Jimmy Graham, who I don't really care about because he's washed, and they have 7 other tight ends on the roster. And then the running game is the same. Montgomery actually finally got work in the second half, but it really doesn't move the needle much for me. I would guess like they maybe give Trubisky one more look, and then he will have a very short leash.
Yeah, I think that seems like about where I would land on it as well. And I agree on the Allen Robinson take. I do think one thing that we did see last year is that, you know, Foles was willing to throw it deep. He did not hold that job when he got back into the back after his injury, but he still was chucking it downfield at a pretty decent rate. And initially too, I mean, before we broke that collarbone, he had a pretty decent connection with DJ Chark in that, you know, that first half or whatever. So very limited sample size, but also when he got back in there, he did not hurt Chark in a meaningful way. And it's a much more concentrated target load or weapon load there in Chicago with Allen Robinson. So I agree. I think Robinson's unaffected. I think Foles too. I mean, I was impressed with what he did in Philly the year before. He was really good under pressure, which is one thing that I remember jumping out to me doing the previews last year. So, you know, with some of Chicago's line issues, which we saw them use Trubisky more as a runner, I do think that could be something where Foles might be able to take advantage because he's been a good pressure quarterback over the last few years. And I don't know, I'm into Foles, but I would also say, like, you got to give Trubisky one more shot, I think, because you invested so much in him, and but maybe not starting would take the pressure off, and then if Foles inevitably gets hurt, they'll have a chance to come in and play hero, and who knows?
Yeah. Also, can we please just get Allen Robinson a Pro Bowl quarterback, just once? I mean, the dude is like legitimately a top 10 talent in the league, but he's been catching passes from Blake Bortles and Mitchell Trubisky, and it's just been I watched a lot of him last year, and he creates separation as good as anybody in the league. But some of the throws that Trubisky, like, first of all, I remember the first game of the year, that Thursday night game, the opener between Green Bay and Chicago last year. He hit, I think it was Jair Alexander or Kevin King, one of those dudes, on a double move and had a 60-yard touchdown, and Trubisky didn't even look his way. Like, it was ridiculously maddening. But my goodness, just before this dude has to hang him up, just let him play with somebody. Let him play with anybody that can actually play at the NFL level consistently.
Yeah, it would be nice for him, but the fact he's able to put that production up with the quarterbacks he has, I mean, I guess you don't know what the ceiling is if you were in a more competent environment, and maybe Nick Foles is going to lead to that more competent environment. I guess we'll find out. Let's talk about, so this move where you could see the quality dropping off real fast here, but Jordan Howard, and a former Bear, going to Miami after he had some decent games when he was using the workhorse back in Philadelphia, but obviously with Miles Sanders there, I mean, and I'm sure they'll continue to muck up that backfield in Philly, but Howard is still a guy who had shown something and has shown something historically. And, you know, he seems like a guy who always gets a little more hype than he does actually get results, but I feel like I was impressed with that stretch when they were using him as a bell cow back last year. I've liked him before when he was in Chicago, and Miami was just so bad. I mean, we all had a great time with the Patrick Laird thing, but That was certainly not a winning running back move. And also, Kalen Ballage was even worse in a variety of ways. So any improvement there is going to be good. I feel like Miami's trying to do something here. I don't hate the move. I wonder what Howard's workload will be, but if he's getting the workload those guys were getting, I feel like he actually could be kind of valuable. How are you feeling about Howard here going to Dolphins?
Yeah, first of all, Kalen Ballage is literally the worst running back I've ever watched in my life. Um, like I think Miami's going to draft somebody still. Like they have 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. Like I imagine one of them goes to, I don't know if they draft like a Jonathan Taylor or anybody now, but maybe like Cam Akers or J.K. Dobbins or somebody. But if they go into the season with Jordan Howard as their starting running back, like it'll be the least sexy pick or play in DFS ever. But I mean, he's going to be the starting running back on an NFL team, and that has value. Patrick Laird, you talked about him. I mean, the last 5 games of the year, he had 14.2 touches per game. So, like, he was getting decent volume. The Dolphins have made improvements to their defense. Maybe they can stay in games. They were actually kind of competitive in the second half. Like, they beat the Eagles at home. They were hanging in games a lot. So, if Howard can get that goal line work, like, he's been a good, goal line converter. The offensive line's a concern. It's really bad. Again, they're going to address that in the draft as well with all the picks they have. 26% of the carries against the Dolphins were stuffed at the line of scrimmage last year. Is the highest rate in the NFL. And Jordan Howard's not exactly a guy that's going to, make plays without blockers
Sure.
at this stage of his career. So I think he's going to be like, again, a really, really boring pick. But you could get 15 to 18 carries a game from a guy who has had success in the past. And if the Dolphins improve at all, like I think it's a viable like RB3 flex option. Again, assuming I think they're going to add somebody, but I don't know if they're going to push Jordan Howard for massive work right away.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Howard's got some upside, and I think that Miami offense too. I mean, having Devontae Parker in there and another year of growth, as well as Preston Williams, who looked good before he went down, and whatever else they add, through the draft or free agency. And we know Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to throw it downfield. It's certainly possible we see more bad Ryan Fitzpatrick if he's starting the year, which we'll see with what they do in the draft. But he was moving the ball downfield. There were opportunities to go around with that offense. And Jordan Howard, I think, can definitely rise with that tide. The defense, too, they have invested in it. I don't know if they made the right moves with guys like Kyle Van Noy and some of the other Patriots retreads they've gotten. But still, they have made some improvements in the secondary and in their defense overall. And the defense did look a little bit sprier down the stretch, or more spry down the stretch. So there's some ways here for Jordan Howard to be useful. And I agree, if you're getting him cheap and you're getting him undervalued, I think that's kind of where Jordan Howard should be and where he could have some upside. So interesting play, certainly for season long, but not a priority one by any stretch. And here's a move I feel like we just have to hit on because it did occur and we didn't talk about it in the first podcast, but Marcus Mariota going to Vegas, and Vegas just adding, of course, the new home of the Raiders if you haven't kept up, but assuming that still happens, I think their stadium's almost done, so I think we should be okay for them, but they're adding a lot of pieces to this offseason, but guys who really don't seem to matter much. I mean, it just jumped out to me that I don't like, I know all the names of the guys they're adding, and I don't find any of them impressive. Jason Witten, of course, the Cowboys stalwart, going to hang out with John Gruden and relive some Monday Night Football glory days of both of them, I guess. Eli Apple also added. Carl Nassib added on defense. Those two guys, they're fine plays, but nobody who's going to do anything in a meaningful way here. But Mariota, maybe he pushes Carr for reps. It does seem like you're bringing him in to compete. And Carr was very accurate last year, but was a check down artist. Mariota was bad at everything last year. Do you feel like there's any shot here that Mariota actually does end up starting for the Raiders, or is it just a move to kind of keep Derek Carr on his toes?
I think there's a shot. Mike Mayock, who's a GM, absolutely loved Mariota coming out. He's always liked him. John Gruden did too, but John Gruden pretty much likes any quarterback coming out at that time because he's doing that Gruden quarterback camp, so he pretty much loved everybody. But I think it's possible. They gave him a lot of money, if I'm not mistaken. Like if they get off to a slow start and Derek Carr is not really doing much, like Mariota could definitely come in. If he does, like I hate everything. Mariota last year obviously got Wally pipped by Tannehill for good reason. When I was breaking those teams down, the first couple of weeks Tannehill was under center. Marcus Mariota literally didn't throw anybody unless they were uncovered. Tannehill would force throws more. So if Mariota is under center, I guess Carr's kind of the same way too. But don't expect him to like force throws anybody. And please, for love of God, don't let Jason Witten and these other tight ends take away from Darren Waller's second season breaking out in the league, because he's very fun.
Yeah, I don't get the Witten signing. I get he wanted to play one more year, but it's so. I mean, that to me is like a weirder one than the Tom Brady.
They have Foster Moreau already, who got hurt at the end of last year, but like he was impressive. Like, what does Jason Witten bring you other like unless they literally use him to just block? Like, I don't know.
I mean, Jarwin was the better tight end, I thought, last year for Dallas, and he got paid in the offseason here. So I don't know. I just don't know what Witten brings. I'm sure it's like veteran presence. These are the kind of things that John Gruden holds near and dear to his heart. And I'm sure that's, maybe there's some value to it for a Raiders roster who did make some improvements. Having another veteran voice in the locker room can help. But I agree. Anything that takes away from their younger pieces, guys like Waller, you want to see them grow. And Mariota, I don't know. I feel like he's kind of washed. I feel like he looked broken in that Tennessee situation. And sometimes that happens where quarterbacks just lose their confidence and it can be hard to get it back. And he didn't show a penchant to avoid mistakes, didn't show a penchant to do anything of note, in terms of creating opportunity. Like, honestly, and we'll talk about the guys that are still out there that could have some potential, but like, would you rather have Mariota or Jameis Winston? Because I would rather have a guy who at least is unafraid to try and you can hope you can change him.
I would have Jameis Winston, and it's not even remotely close, honestly.
I agree. Like, for fantasy and for like an actual NFL team, like at least one guy's has the unfettered confidence that Jameis has, whereas Mariota, like, he doesn't run and he doesn't throw deep. So what is he doing that we thought he would do coming into the pros?
Mariota to succeed, you're gonna have to literally have Stephon Diggs and like Antonio Brown, like from 2 years ago, just guys that create separation at will, because he's not gonna throw guys open and force throws. Also, we might have overlooked this. Jason Witten might have signed with the Raiders, so we didn't have to go back to the booth with Booger McFarland. Like, that might be a thing.
That is true. Honestly, like, even for us, obviously we're broadcasters. We're doing this football analysis. I think we would still be like, yeah, do I really want to be in that booth with Booger and Joe Tessitore? I don't know that that's my ideal spot to break into the spotlight, though. Yeah, I agree. I think it's just a weird situation for Vegas. Vegas continues to do baffling things, but they played pretty well last year, especially at home. And who knows how John Gruden will somehow wring magic out of a terrible roster. We talked about Jameis here. We got to talk about him more. I'm not baffled that he's not going anywhere, or hasn't gone anywhere yet. But I would take the flyer. I don't love him as a dude. I think he's done enough crappy things over the years where he clearly has some bad judgment issues. But man, the dude was fun, and he was like really must-watch football last year. And if you're like a team on the downside of things, he might help you tank a little. But also, he's just going to make things more exciting, going to make the game a little more interesting. And he does the things that we talked about last time with Josh Allen, where he throws it deep, and that's the equivalent to me of throwing up 3-pointers. It sucks that he turns it over as much, but for him, a lot of those turnovers were basically like punts. So where can Winston even go here? Like, I honestly struggle to think of a good spot for him, but if you had to choose one for him, Adam, or if you want to choose a top three, where would you want to see Winston go?
Yeah, I think the problem is a lot of these teams that need quarterbacks are all picking inside the top 7 of the draft. Like Washington, there's rumors about Tua, there's rumors about Cam Newton there as well. But I think I saw a report that they're not interested in Jameis. Miami's obviously picking 5th, and they're like a really, really hot candidate to take Tua. The Chargers already came out and said they're rolling with Tyrod as a starter, but they could easily take Justin Herbert and have him sit for a year at 7 overall. Like, there's just those 3 teams all make sense, but they're all in position to take a quarterback potentially in the draft. And then you have New England, who, like, Bill Belichick and Jameis isn't exactly the marriage that you would expect, but like, he's 26, 27. He's obviously not afraid to make throws. Like, I honestly don't know. Like, I think Cam to Washington makes sense with Ron Rivera, so that would take Jameis out of that situation. I don't know if he's going to get a job right now with the way these teams are shaping up right now, unless he goes to New England.
Yeah, so he turned 26 in January, so he's even younger than I think I would have thought. I figured he was like a rising 27 or maybe even coming 28. But yeah, he's still young. He's got a big arm. I mean, sometimes guys do make this jump, and I joke about it. Like, Jameis, not known as the headiest human being overall, but on a football field, he does still make some savant-like plays and does have moments of brilliance that emerge amidst all the completely bonehead ones. I don't think you could ever train it out of him fully, but Washington was one I didn't think about, but like him and McLaurin would be a hell of a duo if you're willing to throw it downfield and take those shots. And we talked about New England on the last podcast. I would love to see them give that a chance, though. A lot of the reports and a lot of the smoke there seems to be blowing towards them trying some sort of weird hybrid running back quarterback type situation, which Belichick, I'm sure if he does something like that, he'll have a lot of fun doing that. But If you get Jameis,
Yeah.
I'd rather give a shot to Jameis than Andy Dalton, who we'll talk about in a second.
Like everybody wants Jameis to go to New England. And yeah, John Keim from ESPN said that there's no chance the Redskins acquire Jameis Winston. So
Jeez.
like, where the hell does he go? Because
let's look at this. I want to look at a list of all the teams, see if any of them jump out, because I feel like just talking off the top of your head, maybe one doesn't come to mind. But let's see if we can go through one by one and do that, because I think this will be a fun exercise. And honestly, I just want to talk about Jameis for the rest of my life in perpetuity. All right, so Arizona Cardinals, going to say that's a no because of Kyler, right?
Right.
He can't usurp Kyler. Is that another thing? Atlanta Falcons not getting rid of Matt Ryan. Baltimore, I think it's hard to see them shifting off of Lamar Jackson, but maybe 2 QBs, just running both out there together. Get weird with it. Hey, how about this one, Adam? Buffalo? Would you want Jameis in Buffalo?
We already have one quarterback that makes boneheaded plays at times. We're all right.
That would be a fun quarterback room, though. That would be
Yeah, no matter what, you're gonna get some crazy throws at no matter who's in. But I'll pass.
Carolina Panthers, I think they should have been in the mix for him. I think that would have been.
I agree, they should have, but
yeah,
not going to pay him now.
Chicago, they made their move with Foles, so that one's out. It seems. Bengals, I mean, if for some reason all the smoke is wrong and they didn't take Joe Burrow, that'd be fun to put him in there. But
or if Dalton gets traded and they just need a backup, but like, is Jameis the quarterback you want mentoring a rookie quarterback? I don't know.
I mean, Burrow was a prolific deep ball passer last year, and that could be the Brady offense that he played in. But still, I mean, certainly you're right. Not the guy you want to learn from, but stylistically, it does kind of make sense if you're afraid that Burrow can't start day one. I wouldn't rule them out entirely. Cleveland already brought in Case Keenum as their fail safe, so I think that would be out. Dallas, given a lot of money,
Oakland should have signed him.
Yeah, I agree. I would rather have him over. I mean, we talked about that. I'd rather have him over Mariota 10 times out of 10. But
that should have been the move after these other teams signed other quarterbacks. Like, he should have just signed with Oakland somehow.
Okay, here's a fun one. So Dallas, no, obviously Denver. I mean, I know they like Locke, but is he really that dude? I'd rather have him.
Joe Flacco just got released today.
Wait, who did? Oh, Joe
Flacco just got waived.
Yeah, because of his injury stuff.
There's an opening.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind bringing him in to compete with Locke. So I put Denver in the mix. I don't think.
Well, here's the thing. Like, the more the market looks, the more it looks like he's not going to get a starting job. So that would be a team where a backup quarterback might be in need. And like, it's not like Jameis is going to demand a lot of money right now. So Denver might be a team to kind of keep tabs on.
I think actually we have another one coming up that I think is also interesting. Detroit, I'm going to say no. They've already got their backup, and Stafford's still the stalwart there. Green Bay, maybe a year under Rodgers, but Rodgers isn't old enough to make that make sense. But I feel like they do moves like that for hoarding talent. Do you see any chance he could go to Green Bay?
Not really, no.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. I could see them just doing it just because, like, if he's cheap enough, it makes sense. And if Rodgers gets, completely boned somehow injury-wise, there's some way for that to happen, but probably not. Houston, no, obviously with Deshaun. And maybe as a backup could be a move, but I think they already signed McCarron as a backup again, so
they
probably
did.
Not. Colts, no. Jaguars. So Jaguars, I kind of find interesting. Like, why not? I know they like Minshew, but Minshew really didn't show me that much. He was spunky, but the arm talent for Jameis is a million times more there. And you actually have weapons with Chark and Conley and some of those guys. I would bring him in if I were Jacksonville. And also, you're going to sell some more tickets because of the Florida thing. So I think that's a really good move.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
I like that one. Yeah, Chiefs. I'm going to say probably not. We could put a pin in that one.
I think they're good at quarterback.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like he's mostly unproven, and he showed some bad judgment going to Cabo during this outbreak. So I don't know. Chargers, we talked about that. I would love to see them take that shot. I think that does fit the profile. Mike Williams would be the happiest man in all of Earth if that happened. You think the Chargers maybe take a stab?
Again, it depends what they do at 7. Well, yeah. I guess they would probably sign him or not sign it before the draft. So yeah, that's why it's so tough. But I don't know. There was a report that they're good with Tyrod. I would be shocked if they didn't draft a quarterback at 7 though.
Yeah, I would think if you don't sign one, you have to draft one there. But I would honestly, I feel like they have enough weapons that are ready to win now. Unless you love a quarterback in this class, I wouldn't mind doing a gap year and taking a stab at Jameis and trying to flesh out, make their defense stronger, maybe add another weapon at wide receiver. I mean, there are some things they can do here to differentiate if they wanted. They don't need a wide receiver, though, probably. Rams, I mean, they did do a Bortles reclamation project. That seems like a sneaky move to do if he's just available for cheap, but not a high octane one that you expect him to get time, but maybe Jameis and the Rams.
I don't. They have other moves. Apparently, Todd Gurley and Brandon Cooks are on the trade block, so who knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, that's true. That team is in some degree of dysfunction. We'll burn through the rest of these. Dolphins, I don't think they need the Fitzpatrick Winston room.
Jesus,
it seems like if
they want to set the record for interceptions in a single season by a team, they should look into Jameis Winston. Just let them split the games down the middle.
Vikings, probably not. I would think they paid enough money to Cousins. I don't think they want to get more. Patriots, we talked about enough. That should be a move to consider. Saints, no. Giants, no. Jets, if you want to compete with Sam Darnold, but I don't think they want to do that.
I mean, their backup quarterbacks last year were awful, so maybe.
Yeah. Oh God, who's that dude who played the one game who was so Luke Falk. Luke Falk was such a bad quarterback. He was one of the worst I saw all year.
It was so bad.
He was that
game against the Browns on Monday night. It was so bad.
He wouldn't throw more than 5 yards, and he wasn't even good at throwing 5 yards.
And then Myles Garrett killed him.
Yeah, it was that was not the best for any of them.
Without his helmet.
Raiders, no. Eagles, no. They got Sudfeld back in there, so that's a no. Steelers, maybe. That's kind of interesting.
That would be kind of fun.
And he fits. He's a big guy who could take hits like Ben. That makes stylistic sense.
Deep balls of James Washington.
Yeah. I mean,
like, obviously Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges aren't it.
Yeah. Juju's still there.
I could see that, honestly. I could really see the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, that one actually does. That one makes some sense. Niners, I'm going to say no. Seahawks seem like a no. The Bucks, I think, have moved on. Titans, they made their choice.
I think they're good now.
And the Redskins, we talked about that already, but I think that would be interesting, but it doesn't seem like they're going that way. So I think we stumble on a couple here. I feel like Jacksonville is a strong one to me because they could actually...
Jacksonville, and Denver.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the three. I don't know. I think we made some good moves that GMs might not even be considering. If they're not, they're...
All right.
All right, rest of the guys will burn through these fast as we've almost at the hour mark here. Andy Dalton, it seems like he's now Patriots or bust, given that Chicago brought in Nick Foles. But do you think Dalton goes to the Patriots, or do you have a lean for somewhere else? Washington, I guess, could be a move. He does seem like more of a Ron Rivera type guy.
I mean, yeah, they need a veteran. Like, if you're gonna have Dwayne Haskins, or if you bring in Cam, or if you draft Tua at 2, which I don't think they'll do. But like, yeah, they could use a veteran if he doesn't go to I think it's Redskins, Patriots, or bust for him.
Yeah, I think that seems about right to me too. A guy we talked about the other day, Melvin Gordon. I think it's tough because of who's got cap and who doesn't. But we talked about the Falcons being a good spot, but they're pretty much capped out, though I guess he might just have to take very little money anyway. But Melvin Gordon, anything you've seen with him or any leans that you think would be a good fit for him?
Clearly, his market is obviously low. Tampa Bay does have money. I think it's Tampa Bay is the only fantasy relevant spot where he could actually be someone that you want in fantasy. Otherwise, like, Buffalo has some money left. I hope they don't take him. I'd rather just get somebody cheap or draft somebody to pair with Singletary, because I tweeted numbers from yesterday, but Devin Singletary is just really freaking good, and I hope he gets 18 touches a game. But they're going to want to add another running back. So, like, I could maybe see Buffalo if his market continues to decline and he just wants to take some sort of deal. Or other than that, like, the Lions, like, they could use another running back because Carry-On hasn't stayed healthy. It's just, I don't know what he's like. He wants money, but teams aren't going to give it to him, clearly. So I would like Tampa Bay. I don't know if it's going to happen. We'll just have to wait and see. There's been nothing on him, though. Like, there's been no reports. There's been nothing. Him and Robbie Anderson has been just absolutely quiet. And those are the two moves I'm waiting for fantasy, for my article and stuff. Like, I'm just waiting for these two, and there's been nothing.
Yeah, I agree. Melvin would be a good fit in Buffalo if you were willing to take some carries away from Singletary. And, they do want to run a lot, so I could see that being a move. But he wanted to be paid like Zeke, and now he's very much not going to get paid like Zeke.
I could see him in Denver or in Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit would make some degree of sense too, because Johnson just keeps getting hurt every year, so I could see wanting to go there. Like, the Raiders make sense to me intellectually, but with Jacobs there, they're more than set. But that's
and they re-signed Jalen Richard in the offseason.
Yeah, man. Gordon screwed up. Like his agent or he or somebody in this process really screwed it up for him because he was really good that last year. Even for part of games last year, he was also good. But the year before, he was like amazing. I had him on my season-long team. I was just blown away every week by what he was doing. And, somebody's going to get some decent value when they do sign him, as long as they sign him for a reasonable price. Maybe Bill O'Brien could bring him into that room too. Why not?
That's another team that definitely makes sense. But they just gave up everything for David Johnson. Still have Duke Johnson that they're going to not use. They're going to give Duke Johnson 3 touches a game again. That'll be fun.
What an asinine! Like you could sign Gordon on the cheap probably, and then you trade your best receiver for an overpriced running back. Whatever. You beat up Bill O'Brien for multiple podcasts in a variety of ways.
Well, if DeAndre Hopkins never had kids, he'd be on the team now. Apparently,
if only he knew the joys of pulling out, we'd all be for it. Another guy we talked about a little bit as a potential trade target, but Todd Gurley. We don't know his availability. There are rumors swirling around there, but. If he were to go anywhere, where do you think he might go?
Again, Buffalo would make some degree of sense because they need another, more reliable, bigger back to pair with Singletary. But Todd Gurley's contract is not great right now. I'm looking at it right now. I think look at his contract. He has a $17 million cap hit. Like this year, like that is very, very, very unappealing. It's kind of the same teams, right? Like Tampa Bay, just get another playmaker for that offense, and they can just go out and maybe score 30 points a game. I don't know who would want to trade for that, but maybe Houston will trade for it. They're the biggest, like the easiest target right now in the NFL.
Houston with a 3-man backfield of David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, and Todd Gurley seems like a hell of a move for them. I don't know. Gurley, I agree. Tampa Bay, I feel like it's the same destinations for a lot of these guys, but I feel like Gurley just ends up staying. I think that's probably the way that ends up going because I just don't see who'd want that deal for a guy who they showed last year probably can't play more than 20 snaps or 20 touches on a regular basis.
If the Bills traded for him, everything that's happened this offseason would just be for nothing because I'd be so mad. I'd be really pissed off.
Yeah, they got to let Singletary get some run. If you want to get another body in there to run behind Singletary, I think that's fine.
Just get Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, I agree. But don't give him 25 touches a game like Bill O'Brien did.
No, don't give him
10 to 15.
Don't give him 15 first and 10 carries for 2 yards like Bill O'Brien did. Still waiting on him and Devonta Freeman too. I would like Devonta Freeman on the Bills because I still think he's like a good give the ball between the tackles. That Falcons offensive line was terrible last year. The Bills Singletary, I was looking at numbers yesterday, was top 5 in yards before contact. So the Bills offensive line did a good job. Give Freeman 8 carries a game and let him just kind of spell Singletary. I wouldn't mind Devonta Freeman in Buffalo. He obviously would be nothing more than a handcuff, but if anything happened to Singletary, who missed some time with the hamstring last year, Freeman would be a top 20 running back probably.
I think he'd be a little bit more of a vulture because he's got that nose for the end zone that's always been there, whether he's running it or catching it. I feel like that'd be one that would be less ideal from a fantasy perspective, but probably good for the Bills as a football team.
Right, I would much rather give him or Hyde a cheap contract than trade for Todd Gurley just because of his name.
Freeman to Jacksonville too, I feel like wouldn't be the worst. You pair him with Fournette and maybe do a little bit less pass game work for Fournette. I mean, again, not the best for fantasy, but if you're trying to build a competent team, I feel like Jacksonville's just a team I want to see them do something here. They're basically selling off pieces on their defense. It looks like it seems like Yannick Ngakoue is going to be also on the way out, though. Who knows about that? They're playing a game of chicken with each other, but offensively, they have some weapons in the pass game. They have Fournette still. I think there's more they could do if they want to be competitive or at least make a fun team. And Freeman, I think now you're probably not going Gordon or Gurley because those guys you don't need with Fournette. But Freeman's going to do good for somebody this year or do well for somebody this year and probably a playoff team. Here are 2 guys I feel like we might as well lump together: Brashad Perriman and Robbie Anderson. Perriman was an absolute monster down the stretch last year, and I think too, made plays. I know we talked about Tampa Bay's offense and how that propped up a lot of guys, but Perriman made some catches in those last 2 or 3 weeks that I was like, wow, this is not what I expected Perriman. He's a big body dude. He almost looks like he put on too much muscle, but when we saw him act as a wide receiver 1, he was remarkably good. I would take a stab at Perriman as I would honestly, for me, because I think you had him cheaper, I'd go Perriman over Robbie Anderson personally, but the landing spots, I feel like it's just, I really don't have a read on where he would go. Houston would be interesting for Perriman or Robbie, but How do you feel about these guys? I guess they spent enough money on Cobb that they're probably not going to be in the hunt.
Yeah, I could see Perriman or Robbie Anderson if the Eagles had the money with either of those either of those guys to the Eagles. Robbie Anderson, Temple kid, so he's from the area. Perriman was a really good fit with Jameis because he was always being used down the field. He was pretty much in Mike Evans' role after Mike Evans because he got ruled out for the year like the last 3 weeks of the year. So he was pretty much in that. Obviously, Chris Godwin got hurt like week 15 too, so he was the guy for the last couple weeks. That obviously helped, and it's going to get him a paycheck eventually. You'd imagine. I could see the Eagles. I could see Green Bay with Rob. I want Robbie Anderson to go to Green Bay. I think it would be great for Aaron Rodgers. I think it'd be good for Anderson too. I think he would still be like a wide receiver 3 type guy because their passing tree is pretty shallow. It's Devontae Adams for 12 targets a game. It's Aaron Jones in the passing game if Jamal Williams is hurt or inactive, which if he's in the game, if he's active, they're going to use him a lot. So it's really, and they still have no tight end to speak of. So it would really be Robbie Anderson and Devontae Adams in that passing game, and that's it. So I think that would become like a really interesting team for fantasy because you know where all the production is coming from. Aaron Jones, if he's healthy, is getting the goal line work unless he fumbles, because Jamal Williams, I don't know how you feel about Jamal Williams. Everybody hates Jamal Williams because everybody loves Aaron Jones. I personally love Jamal Williams. I think he's really underrated, and I like watching people get mad when he scores touchdowns. Personally,
I'm more on the side of liking Aaron Jones and I'm more on the being mad Jamal side. But he's a good pass catcher, and he's making improvements every year, or he's made improvements every year.
Jamal Williams is just a very boring but solid running back who Aaron Rodgers trusts, and at the end of the day, Aaron Rodgers is the most important person on that team.
No, I think that's fair. And I agree, getting him a weapon here. I think Perriman and Anderson, I can't imagine these guys getting really big deals here, but they've shown enough upside where just opening up, downfield a little bit more. Green Bay would make a lot of sense. I feel like these guys can help out a playoff team. I think they could just also help out a fun team if there's a quarterback who's willing to throw it deep. But they have to go to one of these guys, though, or one of these teams with the quarterback who's willing to actually air it out. But Perriman and Anderson, I think, are 2 guys to watch because I think they will have some fantasy value depending upon where they land. And here's a dude who's just floating around where I feel like the rumors have continually tied him to Tom Brady, and maybe he does go to Tampa Bay and run out of the slot. But Emmanuel Sanders, a dude who probably you're getting for cheap, didn't do a ton for the Niners last year other than a couple of big games, but I think he's still got some juice in him. I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on him if you're getting him for cheap. Do you think you see a landing spot for him?
I saw a report the other day that Dallas was interested in him, which would make some sense. He could take Randall Cobb's role. Other than that, though, trying to find a team, the Eagles could use a slot receiver if Nelson Aguilar walks, which probably happens. He's already a free agent now. Alshon is apparently on the trade block potentially, so maybe the Eagles. Other than that, though, it doesn't seem like there's a huge market for a 34-year-old receiver.
Yeah, it seems like you got to be a win now team who has the room for him to actually get some run and be useful, and maybe honestly,
which I guess Dallas and Philadelphia both kind of fit that mold, but we'll see.
Yeah, the Dallas move does make some degree of sense. I mean, and Cobb was used fairly well, but Sanders doesn't seem like he has the ego at this point to expect a ton of targets. I wouldn't mind adding him if you were a team like Dallas or Philadelphia. I think that does.
Maybe the Redskins. They've been looking at receiver help. They apparently offered Amari Cooper $110 million.
I saw
and
that.
He passed and went to Dallas, and then they're apparently also really interested in Stephon Diggs. So they've been trying to add a receiver.
What could they get a Perriman or an Anderson? Oh man, this is the thing. If they had,
we should have talked about them, but I could definitely see either one of those guys there. Like I said, they've been trying to make moves to improve the receivers because outside of Terry McLaurin, Paul Richardson, he's gone. They were relying on Trey Quinn a lot last year. Steven Sims was actually really impressive, but he's kind of a gadget player. He's not like a guy you throw out and line up out wide and just say, go in one-on-ones. So I could see Robbie Anderson or Brashad Perriman there. You obviously, regardless of who the quarterback is, if it's going to be Dwayne Haskins, you obviously want to build around him and give him some more help, or if they draft Tua, or if they trade for Cam Newton. So that's definitely another team to look at because they've been trying to add receivers.
It only upsets me even more that they won't bring Jameis in, because you imagine McLaurin and Perriman or Anderson out outside. That is just deep ball after deep ball. These guys would both have 1,500 yards. It would be amazing.
Yeah, McLaurin had, I think, last year he was top 5 in percentage of teams' air yards. So he had a lot of air yards, and they don't really have any other deep threats. So McLaurin would probably be if they added Winston, he would potentially lead the NFL in air yards because Mike Evans was right up there last year. Obviously, Terry McLaurin isn't Mike Evans, but he's very good, and he had a lot of production left on the field because Dwayne Haskins missed so many throws, especially in the end zone. So I don't know why there's no chance of him going there as of the reports, but it would definitely make sense. I don't really like Dwayne Haskins. Again, I think it's possible they take Tua, but if they just take Chase Young, like I don't know. I don't get why it's just like I want Cam to go there personally. Reunite with Ron Rivera.
I agree.
I still think Cam is more than capable of producing. I think people are kind of, you know, ruling him just done a little bit too quickly. But we'll see.
Cam either has to be going to the Chargers or he might be getting musical chaired out here somehow because it feels like there's just too many guys in the mix for too few spots. But either way though, I'm now fully on board of whatever team, whether it's Jacksonville or Denver or Washington or whoever the guys we liked for Jameis, just bring on one of Perriman and Robbie Anderson. That's all I would ask out of that offense, and let's make it fun. Like this is why, Adam, when we are running a football team based off these podcasts, I think these are going to be the first moves we make. Just guys who run deep downfield. Let's talk defensive moves real fast here because we are a little bit over schedule, but we want to talk about Darius Slay, but I know you're paying a little more attention to the defense than I am. I kind of want to see how the whole thing comes together before I try to dig into it too much, but 3 big moves that jumped out to me: Slay to Philadelphia, Jarrell Casey to Denver, and then Tennessee adding Vic Beasley with losing Jarrell Casey. Tennessee, I just feel like is kind of treading water with their moves. I feel like they're making some cap moves and giving up a little bit more talent they probably should. Slay, though, I know you had some big thoughts on him, but really seems like he could be a big improvement for Philadelphia, even if he isn't as much of a shutdown corner as people seem to think. How are you feeling about Slay? Do you think that completely changes the game for the Eagles?
Yeah, you and I talked about this on Twitter not too long ago. Like Darius Slay gets this, like in terms of like fantasy, like as this guy you just don't play receivers against. I think he's a very good corner. I think he's not a shutdown guy. I think there's like 3 of those guys in the league. But obviously, it's a massive improvement for the Eagles, who have been hurting at the cornerback position for years. He is going like the Eagles of the last 2 years were like the worst teams at defending number 1 receivers or perimeter receivers. So if Darius Slay helps that at all, you might just be in a situation because the rest of the secondary is still very bad to where, like, say it's the Cowboys against the Eagles, right? You might just be loading up on Michael Gallup in those games, or you might be loading up on they don't play this year, but like John Brown against the Eagles if they were to face Stephon Diggs in the Bills. Like I think number 2 receivers against the Eagles could very well be a thing this year with Darius Slay, most likely shadowing number 1s most of the season. So like, again, perfect example. What if the Redskins bring in Robbie Anderson, Brashad Perriman? You think Terry McLaurin gets Darius Slay treatment? Now, I don't think, again, Darius Slay isn't a guy I don't think McLaurin could get after or anything like that, but it's a situation where we may not be seeing teams go right at number 1 receivers, like remember the Devontae Adams game on Thursday night. Like just that might not be as bad this year with Darius Slay because he's obviously a massive improvement over Ronald Darby, who was the worst cornerback in football arguably last year, and some of those guys. Also, Jalen Mills is now their starting safety, so no more double moves against him, which is no fun, but.
Yeah, Slay, I feel like he's not a shutdown corner, but he is kind of a bend but don't break corner, which is like what I would put a tier below a shutdown corner, where he's a guy. I mean, even, there was a clip I saw going viral and it did not sell me quite as much on Darius Slay, but, even on his bad plays where he's like giving up decent passes or good catches rather to guys like Cooper and I forget who tweeted it, but it was something I saw from one of either the fantasy or football analyst guys out there. And they were showing how Slay, like even on the plays where he's giving up big passes, he's still in guys' hip pockets. He's still defending well. He's giving up like a completion on it, but he's looking good. But I feel like that's just his MO. Like he's going to still give up, 5 for up to 100 yards, but he's not going to give up the monster game. And I think anything for Philadelphia, for the reasons Adam mentioned, is going to be an improvement. Anything else move-wise jump out to you, whether it's Casey or Beasley? I feel like Denver is committed to the defense again, which is good for me to see. I think Miami overpaid for some of their guys we talked about, but any other teams here who made any particularly big defensive moves that jump out to you?
Not really. I will say teams that didn't really make defensive moves. I think Carolina's defense is going to be really, really bad again this year. So you were targeting running backs against them a lot last year. I think we'll be able to do that again this year. So Carolina, a team I think is going to be really bad defensively.
I also think, honestly, Dallas, they signed Gerald McCoy, who was a pretty big reason why Carolina was so easy to run on last year. I feel like Dallas is going to be, the game scripts may not benefit the run a lot there because of Dallas's offense, but I do feel like he's going to make that run defense worse. He's going to be able to get decent pressure, but if they're expecting him to play a heavy amount of snaps, I mean, he just had nothing in run defense last year.
Yeah, their defense is shaky right now too. You lose Robert Quinn, who led the team in sacks. You lose Byron Jones. Their secondary is very, very bad. But again, the problem with Dallas is, they just maybe they play a little bit faster than McCarthy, but they'll just play keep away a lot of the times. So you don't get a lot of play volume against them. But yeah, they have some definite question marks, especially in the back end of their defense.
Yeah, I think they're a team who seems like they're built for some shootouts this year and just going to give up production in a lot of different spots. But yeah, those seem like the major moves here. Anything else that you feel like we haven't touched on that you think is worth hitting on before we call it quits? And maybe we'll do another one sometime next week if there's enough moves to talk about, or once everybody kind of comes together. If not, maybe for the draft. But whatever you want to talk about, Adam, now's your time.
I'm just annoyed because Monday and Tuesday were so fun. I was at my computer all day updating the free agency tracker at awesemo.com, and yesterday all day I was waiting for moves and nothing happened. So I'm just waiting for these running backs and receivers to sign so I can get back to writing, honestly.
It seems like some of these guys too, maybe because of the lack of physicals, maybe that's an issue with some of the signings, but
sure,
might be a thing where after the draft, maybe these guys have to wait for after the draft. Some of the, the Robbie Anderson and Perriman kind of tier of guys, or the quarterbacks who are without a spot. I don't know. I think it'll be an interesting few weeks here, but keep your eyes peeled, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we put this content out. Or if you're listening on our Apple Podcast feed, obviously subscribe to that and give us 5 stars and a review, because we're going to keep doing this podcast as much as we can during the offseason while we have some time to kill. And if you didn't pay attention earlier, go to awesemo.com/NBA2K right now. Today's a big day, not just because we have a Mavericks-Rockets game going on. The Mavericks Dirk Nowitzki championship team versus the Rockets Hakeem Olajuwon 93-94 team, but also a contest on FanDuel today, a free roll where you can just put in a showdown lineup based upon the results of our sim game today. We can't play. None of us are allowed to play. So if you're one of those people who's overly paranoid about the Sharks ripping you off or something, it's not, A, it's free, and B, we are not allowed to play. So we will be watching along with everybody else. And it was a lot of fun doing the show yesterday. It's a fun thing to do if you're trying to kill some time at night. So tune into that. And again, check out FanDuel right now. They're promoting it really, really obviously on their app in a good way for us. But under ENBA on FanDuel, and you could play tonight's showdown slate of NBA 2K. And Adam, anything you want to plug here before we call it quits?
Again, just keep checking out the free agency tracker at awesemo.com. I'm updating signings and fantasy relevant moves. Again, I'll be just updating it as soon as we get anything worth updating. Robbie Anderson, Melvin Gordon, Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, anything that's fantasy relevant, I'll have blurb on, and it is up at awesemo.com. It's being updated every single day, so check it out.
And if you are working for the Jacksonville, Denver, or Washington front offices, just take our advice and get Jameis and make this teams a little more fun. I think that's all I can ask. But we appreciate you guys watching or listening wherever you are, however you're consuming this. We appreciate it. Go follow Adam on Twitter, Pfeifer24. That's Pfeifer24. Follow me at Chris Spags. I'll have some more content coming out across. Apparently, I'm doing League of Legends DFS some point in the next few days. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for, but we're filling the time as best we can, so throw us a follow. We appreciate you guys watching and or listening, or however you're consuming this, and we'll see you guys again soon.